Hey friends, welcome to Dishing on Divorce. I'm your host, Lisa Lisser, CEO and founder of LZL Coaching, a boutique coaching firm focused on divorce, relationships, and life transitions. I come to this work from a place of experience as a divorced mom and with an eclectic background in law, leadership, philanthropy, Jewish learning, and spiritual counseling. After experiencing my own divorce and then getting a master's in Jewish education, I discovered the power of divorce coaching and recognized a profession that blends all my passions and skill sets. I know that the fear and overwhelm of divorce is so challenging, and I know it firsthand. I'm here to provide you with help in ways that are not obvious, yet are so obvious, so you can think of me as your guide on the side. You're listening and watching the new streaming network, home of Going Solo Media and WGSN-DB Going Solo Network radio, podcasts, and TV. You can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Roku TV, and wherever you stream your shows and podcasts. Today, I am very excited to be welcoming psychotherapist Meredith Strauss, LCSW. Meredith is the founder of Light Street Psychotherapy. Her practice works with children, adolescents, adults, and families. Meredith's therapeutic approach helps clients learn the skills to stay centered in a stressful and fast-paced world. She finds appropriate solutions to problems and enhances interpersonal relationships. Light Street is a collaborative team, and today we're going to speak a lot about collaboration. She works closely with schools, providing psychiatrists, learning specialists, behaviorists, and other healthcare providers. Meredith earned her BA from Washington University in St. Louis and her graduate degree with honors from Rutgers University, where she received her master's in social work. She merges Eastern psychotherapy approaches with traditional Western psychology to create an innovative, holistic approach toward healing. And Meredith specializes in trauma. Meredith is licensed in the state of New Jersey and the state of Florida. And I just want to say, welcome, Meredith.
Thank you, Lisa. So good to be here.
It's so good to have you. So Meredith and I were introduced by a client of hers who happens to be a great friend of mine. And what we realized was that we share this idea of collaboration. And so that's something we'll talk about when we get in a little deeper. But first, I want to start with my first question, which is, Meredith, tell us a little bit about your story and how you got here.
Well, this is actually my second career. So before I was a therapist, I was in the film business. I was a film producer, working on films, music videos, commercials, and my company was Light Street Productions. So I actually had a childhood friend from high school pass away from cancer in my 30s. And that really kind of woke me up to wanting to make meaning out of my life, wanting to do more with my life. And I always had an affinity toward psychotherapy. I was always kind of like the friend that people would go to and for advice, help them out. So I decided first to go back to school to become a yoga teacher. And when I finished my yoga teacher training, it really gave me the boost I needed to pursue something deeper for myself. And then I decided to go back to school to pursue my second career. I also had a child at the time. She was young. Traveling a lot in the film business wasn't great for me. I wanted to find something where I could be home more. So, all the pieces of the puzzle kind of fit together in pursuing therapy for people. So that's kind of my story.
It's a great story. And it really fits in with people changing their story in the middle. You know, part of what I see in divorce is a story of people who can't change their story or are afraid of changing their story because there's only one thing they know. And so it's so hard to take the risk to do something that's totally off their line of vision, right? Off what they thought they were supposed to be.
Yeah.
And you know, your story of being in film, which for so many people, and I'm sure for you too, was like this exciting vision that you grew up with and you wanted it so much and you thought that was it, that was the dream. And then life happened and all of a sudden things shifted and you didn't expect it. And so you made a shift that was really different and brave. And you can really authentically speak to your clients who are in the throes of different traumatic changes that they need to move forward.
Yeah, I always say it's never too late to do anything, right? Like, I think people get very stuck in thinking their life was going to be a certain way and wanting to stick to that. And there's, so much time to do amazing work
Yeah. Yeah. At any age.
at any age.
You know, in my field, there's this thing that now is labeled gray divorce, where people are hitting late 40s, early 50s, late 50s, early 60s, and starting to say, hey, it's time for me to do something different. And getting divorced and this gray divorce idea is so challenging for people who maybe weren't the ones to choose it or were the ones to choose it, but don't really know what's next or how to redesign their life. And that's where the therapist and the coach come in
Mm-hmm.
to really say, now is the time to sort of dig deep and then create something new. And so, yeah. Yeah, I sort of talk a lot about Legos versus puzzle pieces. Like, instead of putting the pieces of the puzzle back together, you take the Lego pieces, the same pieces, and create something new and maybe leave some out and bring some new ones in. Because Lego can always be a brand new invention.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's a fun one. It's a fun one.
Good metaphor.
Except when you step on one, but that's a whole other story. But so tell us a little more about the vision of your practice, because you describe yourselves as a collaborative.
Yeah, we're a collaborative practice. There's 13 therapists in the practice, and we specialize in different things. So overall, we have an understanding of trauma. Some of us are very heavily trained in different modalities that address trauma, like internal family systems, IFS, EMDR.
You know, you're using letters. I'm sorry to interrupt, but can you explain what the letters mean in case some people don't know?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of complicated. I think people can Google EMDR, and it's a very common trauma therapy. So you can Google EMDR trauma therapy, but it's a specific modality that addresses trauma. And also pain. We have people that specialize in chronic pain, which can also be very traumatic. Divorce in itself can be a trauma for a lot of people, just like and grief and loss, right? The grief and loss that you experience as a result of losing the life that you thought you would have is really hard for people going through divorce. Okay, so anyway, all of the therapists specialize in different things, and we work together. We meet twice a month as a staff and talk about our cases, help each other with our cases. If people need collaboration with psychiatrists, we can often refer people out to different people that we work with. And we really like to work with psychiatrists that will return calls, email us, speak to us, so that I think that it's important for the psychiatrist to know some of the therapeutic process and not only treat the symptom. So we work a lot with integrative psychiatrists as well. We'll work with schools if we're working with a child study team, guidance counselors, DCP&P, which is Child Protective Services. So we're constantly reaching out to people to try to put together a team. In addition to that, I have a secret passion for holistic modalities. So oftentimes I'll work with yoga teachers, Reiki practitioners, acupuncturists, body workers, massage therapists, functional medicine doctors, all kinds of holistic and alternative people. That is really what I love to do, to create a team around my client, because I do think it takes a village, and that only working with one person doesn't always fit the bill.
Right, right. And I know that we have one mutual client, and she tells me that her team includes Reiki, and she can't imagine going through the challenge of her divorce without having that provider as well help her move through the physical aspects that the divorce process is taking on her, and her mental state.
Yes.
So it's all connected.
It is all connected. I mean, that we love to talk about the mind-body connection, and getting people to work with their bodies and work with their energy and work with their health, their brain health, their mental health, their physical health, their emotional health. It's really a layered process to figure out the psyche.
Right, right. Well, because we're all a, a collaboration of our different parts, right? If we think of us as humans, we have our minds, which impact our bodies, which impact how we operate in the world, which impact our social circles.
Yep.
And then our decision-making process. So
Absolutely.
it's all connected. And although there are some who are rationalists and think we can only think in straight lines, everything is topsy-turvy, especially when we're experiencing trauma and going through a process that we've never gone through before.
Mm-hmm.
The fighting, we know how to do that, but the clearing we don't know how to do. And so that's where divorce is different.
Yeah.
And where I step in as the divorce coach is I help the client sort of jump that chasm between therapy and the lawyering, so that they know that there is something in between to help them get there. And maybe it's not even directly to lawyering. Maybe it's to mediation. How do you plan?
That's what I love about having you on my team, Lisa, is that I know some of the things that you do and could do that as a therapist. And it's more beneficial for me to not do those things as a therapist, to have somebody that I trust to go through the coaching process and know the legal process a little bit more, so that I can work with whatever feelings come up or emotional things that people need to work with around that. And it saves time in a way. If you have a team, you can really streamline what you're going to work on with this person, what you're going to work on with this person, and what you're going to work on with this person. And then you get more of a holistic approach toward your own next stage.
Right, right. And it is filling in the gaps,
Yep.
like filling in the blanks, so that you're moving as a whole instead of piecemeal.
Uh-huh.
And I like that. Like, I'm sort of seeing like as if we were a wheel. We're all different. Like, there's a hub, and then there are different spokes. But if one of the spokes is missing, then it's kind of bumpy.
Sure.
And this makes it much smoother for the ride.
Yeah.
So what do you think your clients who are your divorce clients are struggling the most with when they're in, I mean, all clients are different, but I mean, when they're in your space and they're just at that moment where they know that they need to make that change, like, what is the thing that's holding them back?
Grief. I really think it's grief. Like I said earlier, losing the life that you thought you would have, fear of the future, the unknown, the anxiety that goes with that, fear of financial changes in your life, I think is a huge one. Feeling so dependent on somebody else. And I love working with people just to find their inner strength and reconnect to their power that maybe they lost in the marriage or forgot they had or somehow just glossed over for years. Those are the main ones.
Yeah, those are big ones. And
Yeah.
they're really big. And it really is hard to move forward when you're stuck there.
Yes.
And the thing that I work the most with is the fear. And that's because I can help people educate themselves up. So part of the fear is the not knowing. And when you're going into divorce, you see a black swirling mess and you don't know where to walk through. And you've never been through this process before. So you're a novice and you think everybody else is experts. And very often you may talk to a lawyer who knows that you're a novice, but doesn't know how to speak to you in a way that explains what's going on.
So true.
So what I can do,
right over your head.
words, they just skip whole ideas because they figure.
And then people walk out of the lawyer's office more scared.
Right.
Yeah.
So my role is to educate people up, to say, okay, this is what's going to happen, or this is what might happen, or what would you like to happen? That's almost even more empowering. And most of the time, the first thing they say is, I don't know.
Right.
And then I say, but what if you had to know? Or what if you got to know? Or what if you got to choose? And then we're opening up something different. And I can be like very amorphous, like up here, not amorphous, but very heady about what we talk about, or I can be deep in the weeds. So today I was in Florida statutory law, just reading the statute on child support and trying to figure out how to help my client navigate the fact that her soon-to-be ex wanted to do mediation, wanted to get over fast, but hadn't produced any financial information whatsoever and figured they'd just waive alimony after 32 years of marriage. And I'm thinking, that's not okay. But her lawyer was like, well, you haven't really produced need and we don't know what he can pay. So maybe you don't get alimony. And I'm like, hold this door here. We've got to stop. And I showed her the statute, and I can't provide legal advice because that's not my role. But I can show her the statute. The statute is public, and that's exactly what it says. So it was really like getting down to business on what you know,
Yeah,
and what you don't know, so that you can educate yourself up.
one of my favorite lines is, you don't know what you know until you know it.
Exactly. And I remember I was in one course at one time. I did landmark education many moons ago. And you know what you know what you don't know. But the biggest category is you don't know what you don't know. And that's huge. And until you start to dig into that, you really.
Yeah, and I love to work with people to say, like, every obstacle that comes up is a teaching.
Yeah.
No matter how bad it might look in this moment, there will be some kind of nugget that we can take from it and learn from it. And always to view obstacles as teachings is an amazing way to approach life in general.
Yeah.
Divorce or no divorce.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because we really remember the most from our mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what stays with us. And that's where we learn. And one of my coaches taught There's no winning or losing. There's just winning and learning. And because we can take it as a negative, or we could take it as, okay, and now I know. And I can remember not to do this again in the future, or however we want to learn it. And that can be really powerful. So, it was a good session this morning. So, and she really.
I didn't know you worked with people in Florida. That's good to know.
Yes, indeed I do. Indeed I do. We have 2 new clients in Florida. So I can work anywhere. So that's the beauty of divorce coaching and Zoom.
Right. It's different than.
Exactly. But so that's just part of this way that coaches can work. We can be in the weeds, or we can be in the sky. So holding hands or holding documents, it's both the same. So I'm trying to think, what do you think is needed for your clients beyond sort of the help that they know that they have? Like, there's what they, you know what I mean?
It's been really helpful. I think groups.
Okay.
I think people need, we call it group therapy, but there's support groups out there. There's ways to connect with other women that are going through divorce, or men that are going through divorce. There's ways to get kids together that are going through that. I think people just need more. It goes back to, it takes a village, right? To really expand your village in a way socially as well. There's no shame in it. People often will have very good things to share that maybe you never thought of, or will help you feel, like you're not in the boat alone.
Yeah. It's about the community.
It's about community.
Right? So often people going through divorce feel alone and isolated. And many times it's because they're self-isolating.
It's a lot of shame. I think people have a lot of shame. We use the word shame a lot with trauma. And I think, divorce being a trauma in itself, I think people want to hide because they just feel like they're somehow a failure because their marriage didn't work.
Yeah.
But the marriage is not synonymous with the person.
Right. But it's more than the marriage. It's more like you have your inner identity of I was supposed to be able to make this work.
Right.
I have a story.
Feeling like a failure.
Yeah. With my own kids, my son, they were at the very beginning of our divorce process, like the very, very beginning. He was very angry at me in the very beginning. And I said at one point, how come you seem so much more angry at me than at Dad? And maybe that was the wrong question. But his answer was, because you always fix everything. And you didn't fix this. And you know what? It was very telling. Of course, it ripped my heart open, but this is how people feel the shame and the sadness and all of those emotions.
But how amazing that your son could express that in that moment. And, I always teach people how to just really validate their children's feelings, whatever comes up.
Yeah.
And whatever feelings come up in themselves. We don't know how we're going to feel until we're in a moment. And then how do you honor that feeling for yourself and really lean into it rather than try to push it away and think that it's bad and beat yourself up, and in comes an inner critic yelling at you and telling you what a horrible person you are.
Yeah.
I want to get people in relationship with all the voices inside their head so that they can validate all of it.
Right. Absolutely. So I'm going to take a break here. So we'll have a few seconds with our sponsor, and we will be right back. And we're back. So welcome back, Meredith. It is so good to see you and have you on our show. I was wondering during the break, you were talking about all the different voices that are going on inside of us. And it's almost like there's a community that we're working on, right? That we're working with. And it reminded me of the film Inside Out. And I know when I was an educator, when I was teaching in Jewish religious school, we used clips from that film a lot when we were doing social emotional learning with the kids. And all the different emotions that we have going through divorce are challenging and empowering at the same time. So it's like we're feeling everything everywhere all at once, right? And how do you help your clients when they don't know how to parse through all of that? Because it can be confusing to feel proud of yourself and still really sad, or,
Yeah, so I had referenced earlier a modality called internal family systems, which is we call it IFS for short. And internal family systems is very much like the movie Inside Out. It posits that it's not about a family outside, it's about the family that lives inside you.
Okay.
And the idea is that we're all born with a self, and the self is kind of the perfect, peaceful, calm, and compassionate person that you're meant to be at your core. And what happens when life happens is we develop all of these different defense mechanisms and parts and ways to operate in the world that will protect that self in different ways. And some of those parts, like the more vulnerable parts, shame, I'm not worthy, I'm a failure, I'm unlovable, thoughts like that, they actually get exiled out of our awareness. We don't even want to feel those things. So we push them away so much. And all these other protectors develop around those to protect those parts from ever coming out, so that nobody will see my shame. Nobody will feel how worthless and horrible I am. So eventually we get people to understand how your internal system works and develop a self to part relationship, so that we start to become curious with our parts, and we ask questions with them about what they want us to learn or know about them, and what kind of job they're trying to do to help us. So for instance, if somebody's very angry, their angry part might be protecting them from all the shame that they feel deep down inside, that maybe they're not worthy, but they don't want anybody to see that, so they come across as angry. So once we learn the job of the angry part, that angry part can learn to trust self more to help it, because we validate the feeling. We say, yeah, I get that. You're angry. That makes sense. And then how we offer the part different ways of being, of speaking for, rather than saying, from your angry part, you say, I'm noticing I have this part of me that's feeling really angry. Then people are listening to you differently when you learn how to communicate for your parts rather than from your parts. So we talk a lot about parts in this practice, and how to be compassionate toward every part. Every part is welcome, no matter how bad, and I'm doing air quotes,
right.
No matter how bad those parts may seem, they always have a positive intention for you and something that they're trying to do to help. And if you can try to figure out what that is, the whole system will start to calm down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. And it refers back to when you were talking about obstacles.
Yeah.
So these parts, in some ways, create obstacles that are there to teach you something.
Always.
Right? So what is it there to teach you? And sometimes you just don't have the time or the emotional bandwidth to see the lesson because you're so emotionally unbalanced at that moment. And unbalanced isn't really the right word.
That's really what I love about the work, because we do a lot of closing your eyes and going inside and connecting with your body and how your body, it's like when your heart is pounding and you're anxious about something, if you slow down and close your eyes and focus on that pounding heart, it will speak to you. It will tell you what it wants you to know. And then you can calm it down with breath, with techniques. There's all these ways of being in relationship with your parts, but people have to be open to, can I go inside and listen to myself and stop talking so out here?
Right.
Yeah.
And so one of the
hard for people.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah.
What are the practices that I do that's similar and different, but similar, is that I invite my clients to notice when their heart starts racing or when they start to feel trigger, and to take a breath. But just the act of noticing creates a pause and creates the space.
Yeah, I use the word pause all the time. I say you pause and you just pay attention. Pay attention.
Yeah.
To what you notice, and then see, can you get unblended, we say in IFS, can you get unblended from that part and really see what is it trying to tell you?
Yeah.
What does it want you to know? What's it afraid of?
So often in relationships, in marriages, you feel like you're blended with your partner, right?
Yes.
You feel like you are, I can't think of the word. There is a word, but you feel like you're commingled and you don't know how to disengage.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you become forcibly disengaged is almost like
Losing a limb.
Yeah, amputating a part of you.
Yeah.
And you still feel that amputated part, but you don't know what to do with its absence.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, again, it's like recreating all the fighting is recreating having that part be a part of you. And so
Yes.
what I work on with my clients is letting go of some of those regular arguments that they would have. So if they have something to say, I very often invite them to not say the second half of the sentence. So don't say the because, right? Just say the information that's necessary. We call it BIF, brief, informative, factual, and firm. Say
Love that.
The information that needs to be conveyed, make it information, and be done. So you don't have to say, because every time, blah, blah, blah. Because also, as we know, when we use the word every time or always, and I'm using the symbols, then we're totally getting rid of all our credibility, because there's going to be one time that they're going to be able to give you an example.
They didn't. Right.
Discredits everything.
Yeah.
So let's just say what we have to say and let go of the explanation, because then we'll have more credibility. And that's the communication pattern that I practice with my clients also. So we rehearse it in session, so that, because it's hard to get used to doing a new behavior when you've been doing a dance for a really long time, and those steps are like, they just come at you.
Yep.
So we work on it. And I have one client who I worked with, and she was not getting divorced, but she was constantly in tension with her husband about particular issues. And she hired me to help her with those issues. And she kept on telling me what he was doing wrong. And I said, what if you just shared the solution, but didn't tell him what he was doing wrong? And not in exactly those words, and just said, this is the solution. And she tried it. And she was amazed. She was amazed because the fight ended right there. Like, it didn't even become a fight.
Right.
And you do that a few times, and then your partner stops feeling attacked every time you talk.
Yeah, she was triggering his shame parts that
Yeah.
felt like he couldn't do it right. And by taking that out of the mix and just going toward the solution, it helped him empower him as well.
Right.
Great advice, Lisa.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, doctor. So yeah, I think that what we do is so in sync. And I love learning more about your practice, and the parts therapy is so brilliant. And it makes me think about my clients even more deeply, because I don't purport to do your work, but where it syncs with my work on the what we do now and what we do in the future is so important. And it helps me, especially when I'm working with the same people that you're working with. And that is a true honor. So
yeah, me too. It's been an amazing journey to just see how, with both of us, actually how quickly somebody can move forward when they have the right support team.
yeah, 100%. So thank you so much for being here. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience? And also tell us how we can find you.
You can always go to my website. It's lightstreetpsychotherapy.com, all one word, and read about all the great clinicians that are there. And, it's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you for coming and sharing your wisdom. I really appreciate you. And I hope we speak again. And you can find me, my audience, at Lisa at lzlcoaching.com or www.lzlcoaching.com. You are listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network Radio, Podcasts, and TV. You can find us on the newstreamingnetwork.com. Thank you, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.